All right, we're here. Nathan, welcome back. Crossing the chasm together. I'd say we've already crossed the chasm just getting from our first webinar. Here we are to the second webinar. So, right? Some probably in our audience today that have made that cross together with us. And there is so much I'm excited to cover on this topic today with you. Just super excited to be here. How are you doing today?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to change my name from MyCORE to Nathan Bourne. So let's see if that does it. Also,
that did it. Good job.
And then the other thing that's really important, because we learned this the hard way last time, like 20 minutes into it, is the chat. So I want to make sure before we rock and roll. This gives us a little, a little second for people to get on.
Let's do.
How people are with time. But let's make sure. I thought we had said
maybe those of you on could say a little hello in the chat so we can see that that's working properly. All right, give us a hello. Let us know you're there. Just testing the chat at the moment.
Chat is disabled. No. You will not be.
Enable. Not working. I see. Yes, thank you for that, Patty.
Wait for it. How about now? Any better?
Okay, got it, Bud. Thank you.
All right, let's rock and roll. I'm ready to dive in. I'm excited, and I think we just worked out all of our technical difficulties there. So
excellent.
Back to you in the studio.
Nathan, I mean, why would you talk about crossing the chasm together today? I tell you, the past 2 weeks since you put that out there, I've just been thinking about all the ways in which together, with those of you maybe out there listening right now or listening even on replay, like we're going to be more effective having this conversation together. We're going to be better able to grow, cross all sorts of chasms in our lives. But what's on your mind about that, Nathan?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I feel compelled to teach and train and speak to things that I have royally screwed up. So it's this kind of a duty, if you will, to help others avoid certain missteps if possible. I heard it this way years ago, that we should learn from mistakes, preferably other people's. And I remember hearing that and like, yes, like I'm going to do that. Like I'm going to pay attention to what everyone is doing wrong, or what they have learned from or grown through, and I'm going to avoid it. And I did pretty well for a while. It kind of reminded me like maybe like a video game, or my daughters and son now, he plays Roblox, and they have these certain games within the game that there's obstacles, and you can fall off and you can die, and that sort of narrative is common in video games. But it's not a real good strategy for life, because you don't get to fall onto the spikes or, fall into the abyss and then just come right back. So I think a lot of us try to sidestep and try to, avoid it and just try to navigate through delicately. And one of the worst things that can happen is that you get pretty good at that. Like you might have gotten through high school or college or your 20s or even your 30s and like be doing pretty well for yourself, but there could be something that isn't quite there, something that's not quite firing for you. And we could lump that into mental health, but it's, I think, broader than that. And I think that there's a real process, a real journey that if we could just be more aware of, we might approach it differently. So that's why I feel compelled to answer your question, to speak to this, because I think there's some key issues, some key challenges, like, nothing's really new under the sun. We're all going through the human experience. We're all, having to navigate the human condition. And what I'd like to do kind of on the front end with you conversationally and also in the chat is just address those issues, say hey, this is the ish, this is the problem, these are the pain points. And then hopefully together, in a sense, we can cross a chasm in this webinar together. Does that make sense?
I love that. And I think that what we've all been through over the past few years has, I think, raised an awareness, right, around the chasm. I was just thinking about, I kind of followed in my father's footsteps myself and became an attorney and like him practiced law for a number of years. But there came a time where he wanted to pivot from that. And he stepped away and he actually bought a couple of furniture stores. And this just came to mind to me right now. And it really, it didn't work out, but it nevertheless served a certain kind of crossing for him, because it allowed him to move into a different space where then he could circle back to being kind of counsel and consulting and still be in this world, but in that legal world that he had wanted to be in, but in a different way. And I think that sometimes we learn it from, like you're saying, other people. It's our parents, it's our own journey, it's pandemics. There's so many ways to learn skills that can help us cross chasms of all sorts in our lives.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I think that happens a lot, particularly in highly educated fields, that are more based on your thinking than your doing. You see that sometimes that there's a lot of disillusion, and there's a lot of drainage of energy. And you would think maybe from the outside looking in, hey, you have all the things, why would you go for furniture stores? Like what? That seems so random or so bizarre compared to this core competency and this core education you have. And I don't think that that's random. I think that that's almost predictable in a sense, if we don't approach this gap, right, this chasm properly. Let's spend some time together, Susan Marie, defining what I mean by that. Because if you're looking at just the title of this episode, this webinar, this day, this moment, that could be taken really broadly, right? How to cross the chasm together. So let's define that. Let's talk a little bit about, if we may, what that means. Cool.
Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, you've been inspired in a lot of ways from Simon Sinek's teachings and the law of diffusion of innovation. And I think to myself, even your own journey with MyCORE and my coming to it. Like in the beginning, I don't know that I was an early adopter, but boy, I sure am now. And, how does that happen for people? To talk about what that means for you in terms of a topic.
For sure. And to, give credit where credit's due, it was Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The Tipping Point, that I first saw this law. It shows back up in a lot of Simon Sinek's work. It certainly informs a lot of my work. And I'll tell you where I was in life when I first, came across it. I was a freshman in college, and a guy I was wrestling with at Penn, and he was like the superstar. Like there were 6 of us that were recruited to wrestle that year, incoming class. This was 2006. I graduated high school in the spring, was starting my freshman year. This might have been in the spring, it might have been 2007, but either way, this individual was the standout recruit. He was the national recruit. He was the main event. And at the time, I had a clothing company that I had started. And he said, "Have you read The Tipping Point?" And I was like, "No." And he handed me the book. I still have that book, the exact book, in my belongings. And I read it and I thought, this is way more fascinating than these classes that I'm taking. And I got obsessed with this idea that you could create a groundswell and that you could get the wind at your back and that you could gain momentum and that people would come out of the woodwork to be loyalists and raving fans and confidants and just like lock arms with you. And that sounds kind of artful, right? That there's like this nuance to it and kind of this magic to it. And there's components of that, but there's a science to it. There's a process to it. There's a real path that if we don't recognize it, we don't reckon with it, we may find ourselves down the path. And from the outside looking in, we would have actualized success. We would have gotten results. I heard this years ago and it stuck with me. And I can't unhear it, that nothing fails like success. I'm gonna say this again. Nothing fails like success, right? Wait, what? Well, see, you might end up manifesting that, building that, acquiring that, and it might be the worst thing that ever happened to you.
So in other words,
stuck, right?
My father being an attorney all those years prior to transitioning, or even myself practicing law, or even yourself when you were Division I wrestler at an Ivy League school. Right.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. I mean, that was a pivotal moment for me because I was on the, it was relatively juvenile being younger, but I was like on the path, like in culture, like that's where you want to be. If you're going to be an athlete, Division I, if you're going to be a student, Ivy League, like I was doing the deal. And I read this book and it done messed me up, because then I learned of this law. And generally, I like to respect laws. If you're an absolute like criminal, then maybe you don't respect laws. But generally, I like to respect them. Stay around the speed limit. Recognize gravity. I believe that E equals MC squared. I might not like really be able to explain to you electricity, but I know it works and I have a general idea of how to utilize it. So when you're dealing with a law of the universe, you gotta deal with the law of the universe. Like you can't bury your head on this. You have to really acknowledge it. And some of the tangible problems that come from not understanding this law are feeling like you're on a treadmill. Right? I'll ask that to people. Have you ever felt, I'm going to put it in past tense because then it makes it a little softer and you don't have to admit if you're feeling that way right now. But have you ever felt way back when, not like recently, definitely not in this moment. Have you ever felt like you were on a treadmill where you're running, you're sweating, you're running, you're doing the work, you're putting it in, but it feels like you're going one step forward and two steps back. It feels like the conveyor belt just keeps looping back and you're on the hamster wheel. I'd love to see in the chat if anyone can identify with that feeling, or is that just me? By the way, there's a warning here, which is that I've learned all these things that we're unpacking today the hard way. So these aren't things that I avoided. These aren't, I didn't pass that level in the video game. I died and I died and I died and I died and I died. And then eventually I figured it out through stick-to-itness and through a better awareness. And I feel compelled, as I shared, to hopefully, maybe you can't avoid it, but you could maybe just compress time frames. And maybe the fall won't be into the abyss. Maybe you'll just skid your knee. Maybe you'll hurt your wrist, but you won't be crippled.
Yeah.
Anyone relating to that feeling of a treadmill?
Well, thanks, Nathan. Actually, David Johnson was saying that sometimes it's just, there's a lesson that you haven't learned yet. And I think when you say nothing feels like success, because then we can be lulled, right? We can fail to stretch or grow or recognize that we're being lulled or on the treadmill that you're talking about. Others are saying that they've absolutely felt that before.
There's also like real responsibilities. Like you went and got that mortgage with that success, and now you have to pay it. If not, you're going to be in foreclosure. Exactly. There's 2 cars in the driveways that there's car notes on. And I mean, the kids got to go to school, kids got to eat, families got to eat. So this is where the real lethal part of it is. Failure and struggle and breakdown generally do not come in the form of thunder and lightning. There's not a burglar at your door. It's the death of a million cuts. It's very incremental. It's very much the compound effect. So how do you get this effect, this law, to work in your favor and not work against you? Well, that's what we're talking about today, right? But I can't give you the answer. I can't give you what I've learned. I can't give you what I'm learning. I haven't learned it. I'm learning. I'm in it. I'm doing it. I'm living it. I might be a little further along, maybe a little further than others, not by much. I heard a great phrase, right? It's a great way to be confident, but not too confident. You can say, I'm better than most. Hey, how you doing? I'm doing better than most. Hey, how's that company you're working on? It's doing better than most, right? How are your relationships? They're better than most. Just be careful who you compare yourself to. Because a lot of times when we talk about comparisons, it has this connotation that you wouldn't want to compare yourself to somebody that's doing better than you. Like, hey, look, don't compare yourself to people that are celebrities or rich and famous, and, or really making big impacts. Like you won't feel like you measure up. Heck, I'm saying don't measure yourself to people that are destitute, to people that are down and out, to people that are bottom feeding, because you might think you're taller than you are. Right? I'm 5'11". I was the biggest dude on the wrestling team. I was up there in height. And then I'd hang out with the basketball players and go, well, damn, right? It's all relative. So be careful who you compare yourself to, because you might be comparing yourself to your sibling who's very close to you, could even be your twin, and be like, well, compared to them. Yeah, but you're not called to compare yourself to them. You're called to compare yourself to him, right? To something like perfection. And not to beat yourself down about it, of course, but to be aware. This is really all about awareness, right? Personal development, personal growth. It's mainly an exercise in awareness, right? I spend a lot of money on therapy, and I never solve anything. I just come out more aware of it. And then I go, oh, this just in. There's a forecast in anger combined with trauma and stress. Yeah, looks like the showers will be coming at 2 p.m. today, right? And then I at least just get an umbrella. I throw a jacket on. I might stay in the house, turn up the AC, turn up the heat. Like I'm adjusting to it all. We're adjusting to it all. We're not fixing it. So don't spend much time with leaders that claim they're going to fix your problems, or that their company or brand or solution is going to make it easier or more convenient. I would be weary of that language. I'm going to talk more about that too. But, I'm ranting and raving. So back to you.
Well, it's ever evolving, right? It's ever evolving. And I just look at the ways in which, and one of the reasons I love you sharing on this topic, Nathan, is the way you constantly put yourself in that place of being uncomfortable, whether it's always working to improve, well, you're describing probably interpersonal relationships, on the home front and all the way to your business. I mean, you talk about who you're comparing yourself to. And I think there are so many companies that don't lead with the kind of mission and values that I've seen you put together at MyCORE, for example. And, you know, if we're looking to help people cross this chasm together, like it's all those fronts, right? It's the personal, it's the interpersonal, it's the people closest to us. And it's at work, because that spills over into the community, that spills over into our world, all of us here together.
Hey, I love the note that you just ended on there. You said the word together. It was like the last thing you just said was together. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit, because we've all heard that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And there's a lot of wisdom chock full, you know, that phrase is chock full of a lot of wisdom. I think there's like maybe an additional component of that. And it's not just the length or the depth that you go, but it's who are you with when you're going there, right? Like you might put a team together that takes you far, but you still don't find peace. You still don't find prosperity. You still don't find abundance. You still don't find safety. You still don't find camaraderie. So just be weary of some of these phrases, because they generally are one-dimensional, and they deserve to be broken up and multi-dimensional, three-dimensional. But you know, dimensions kind of like televisions, they just keep coming out with more versions. Like I don't know what 4K is. I have no idea what that is, but I know 5K is coming. You know, I don't understand what 4K is. So I digress. But the point is, like, how do you live in the moment that you're in? Enjoy the 4K TV, know that the 5K is coming, but not be upset that you might have the 3K. Right? Like how do you reconcile with this and find peace in the moment that you're in? And I don't have all the answers. I'm just, you know, pontificating, you know, navigating, sharing real time. Because if you're dealing with some heavy duty stuff and you're trying to process through that, the best way to do that is to start a webinar and put your life on blast. Obviously. No, right? But really, you know, it helps me, it helps you, it helps us, right? And the people that are with us live and will be catching the recording. You are an early adopter of this conversation. You're choosing to be part of this moment with these people, even if it's through technology and chat, if we can figure the damn thing out, then you're about to cross the chasm. And you're being aware, consciously or subconsciously, of who you're doing it with. So my other question, sort of, my other like problem question is, have you ever thought you had the team? You had the crew, you had your OGs, your day ones, your ride or dies. You were like, this is us. And you thought you were gonna cross together, that the Red Sea would part and you would be on the other end. But it didn't materialize. It faded out. I'm curious if anyone's experienced that. Now, if you've been in a company with like team building as part of it, then yeah, you probably have. But I'm not talking about something like specific. I'm talking about, could have been your family. Could have been a church community, could have been like a zip code, like a physical place that you lived, could be a company, could be a partnership, could be a cause. But there was like a moment where you're like, man, I really thought we were in this together and breaking through. What happened? I want to hear if anybody can relate to that. Because I think that happens often.
That could be so, it's just disheartening. Right? How do we, in that moment, not go back necessarily. Look, maybe reach back so people, we could still, some may still come with us, but we need to stay focused, right? Where we're going. David Johnson's talking about how do you craft and nurture a team that will take you far. And I really hear you talking about, Nathan, that if Malcolm Gladwell is talking about kind of this groundswelling and capturing that, and even if that might shift over time, it's going to be about, I heard you talking about who it is that you're with on this journey. And if it's not those original ones, how does that morph over time? How do we sustain?
Right.
And yes, do it together.
And, hindsight being what it is, 2020, I unfortunately have a lot of perspective on this, because when I read that book at 17, 18 years old, freshman in college, I made it my business, literally, that I was going to build a team. I was going to create a movement. I wanted there to be a following, I just made a decision in that moment that I wasn't going to go it alone. And I think I just knew in my mind, in my heart, in my gut, in my core, that I'm going to need a lot of people. I'm going to need a lot of people around me. I'm going to need like a crew to rehab me and to help me do me. I'm not one of these lone wolf types. And I don't believe that lone wolves are lone wolves. I think that they're avoiding a really uncomfortable space, because teamwork is an exercise in vulnerability. Teamwork is an exercise in criticism. It is uncomfortable to get feedback, but it's necessary for growth, not just personal, but us as humans. And this is one of the issues we have going on in our world today, because everyone's so touchy and on eggshells. There's such a fear of being canceled, a fear of saying the wrong thing, a fear of having the wrong thought, a fear of not understanding something culturally. And it's that's what you guys eat? I didn't know. I thought you did eat that. No? Okay, sorry. I guess I'm fill in the blank, right? Well, the problem is, how am I going to know what your culture is if I can't talk about your culture? How are you going to know about my culture if I can't talk about mine? The irony is that there's a great deal of division in an attempt to claim unity. So how do you cross the chasm together? Because you can cross the chasm on your own. Okay, good on you. Cool, you make a lot of money. Awesome. You have a nice house. Great. You're important. You have a bunch of acronyms past your name. You give a lot of money to charity. But you can skate by without ever really letting anyone into who you are, especially if you have some natural faculties. If you're just generally smart and not so awful to look at, and if you maybe had some privileges that came with your life. And this is danger zone. This is lethal stuff. And I think there's a way that we have to address this. And that's why I'm excited to be in this moment with you and with those plugged in here to navigate that. So I'm going to bring up a visual, and I'm going to speak to the law of diffusion, or the long version, the law of diffusion of innovation. What really is required to create a tipping point, a momentum, a movement, a velocity, to put the wind at your back. There's something very natural and beautiful about it too. I grew up in Ocean City, Maryland, and I'm not an avid surfer by any stretch, but I picked up surfing, and I'm better than most at surfing, but that doesn't say a lot. And I got the experience of surfing in California a little bit, and Costa Rica and Mexico. It was all very recreational, but I was just good enough to hold my own. And I got to that point in the sport, in the hobby, that I could experience what riding a wave is. And if you've had that experience, because you know what, I'm not talking like bodyboarding or letting the ocean take you, that's like little sprinkles of it, but when you learn how to actually paddle into the wave, surf to the left or to the right, and catch the wave. And then if you do some stuff with it, great, that's just like a little extra, style. There's something magical about feeling like this ocean that is vast and deep and wide is at your back, is serving you, is loving you, is protecting you, and kicking your ass at the same time, because you might get slammed to the bottom, and there's a lot that can happen there with reef, and it's a pretty cool experience overall. So I'm saying this to say that trust me, you want that in your life. You don't want to just be paddling upstream and forcing it and or avoiding it. Cool.
I think a lot of people are attracted here to these webinars, Nathan, because they have a sense of knowing that somewhere inside, we all know like how hollow it would be to just do something alone. Like where's the joy or the impact or the satisfaction?
Yeah.
And so we're here to in a sense be vulnerable together, to explore.
Right.
People, because doing it, if you're not alone, you're doing it with people. And gosh, I feel like I so often hear from people, I just don't like to deal with people.
Right. Yeah. With the program, right? Because this is our moment. There isn't a better time in the human history to be a person. There just isn't. And look, pay attention to what's going on. If you can't see what's happening in the tech industry right now, with mass layoffs and banks going, under. I'm not talking doom and gloom. I'm talking man versus machine. Right. I'm talking like, wait a second, we might have this wrong. We might have built technology and tried to support it by people when we should be building people and supporting it by technology. I got to say that again for my own thinking. Do you see the subtlety?
That's so good.
It seems like it doesn't make a difference. Like, what do you mean? All the same words are there. This is syntax. This is sequence. It matters. I loved this example I heard years ago, that if you say the dog bit Johnny, it means something. You start to sympathize for little Johnny. You wonder, what kind of dog was this? Was this a Rottweiler? Better not have been a pit bull. Their jaws like locked down. Bit him in the face, the leg. How's Johnny doing? Take those same words and you put them in a different order. The dog bit Johnny versus Johnny bit the dog. How concerned are you for Johnny when you find out that he's biting dogs? You're worried, but in a different kind of way. You're like, who is Johnny's parents? Why is he biting dogs? This kid out. That poor dog, right? What kind of dog is it? Is it one of those annoying lap dogs? I'd have bitten him too. Joking, but here's the point. If we perpetuate a world where we are building technology, or as I like to put it, to take a page out of last time's webinar, building what's, and we're saying, hey, look at all these great what's, let's put who's into them. Let's put who's around them. Let's support them with who's. Look at all this great tech, and we've got service to go with it. Look at this great software as a service. No, it needs to be people that we're building on an individual and collective level, right? And then we can support them with what? Support them with software, support them with this very moment that we're having via Zoom from thousands of miles away. What an
Support them.
shattering difference.
Yes. Support them with AI. I just heard an interview this week that people are worried about AI coming after their jobs. Well, it's building up the people. Yes, have AI support the people. Or have the programming. David Johnson's talking about how programming, how much do you think programming affects our potential to cross the chasm? Have the programming support the people, right? That all fits in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't have all the answers, and I'm way out of my wheelhouse when it comes to AI and all that is. It is mind-blowing to me. But I choose to look at the history, to look at the past, and the human brain is thousands and thousands of years old. It's been refining and course correcting, and yet these technologies are years old, maybe a few decades. So I just don't see where it ever catches up. I think the human being has such a head start on technology that unless we subdue and we like fall asleep at the wheel on this, I don't see a scenario where it overcomes us or replaces us. Will things change? Of course, but things change. What are you talking? Like what? Like look at anything, anywhere, at any time. It's changing at all the time, right? The only constant is change. We just like flippantly just say, oh yeah, the constant's change. Like we should probably deal with that. Like we should probably plan for that. We should probably strategize for that. So last webinar, we unpacked one of our core values, which is more than a core value. It's a real blueprint. It's a real framework, what we call lead with who. And I want to just do like a really quick synopsis because I want to integrate that thinking with the law of diffusion. And I think if there's an awareness around this, that it increases, nothing's guaranteed, but it greatly increases our chances, our probability of crossing the chasm together. So I think what we've done, I hope, is identify two major issues, and it's all in the title. One is that there's a gap, right? There's a breakdown, there's a chasm, there's a space that needs to be crossed. And then it needs to be done together. And yes, you've got to have both. So if you cross the chasm alone, you don't win. And if you don't cross the chasm together, you don't win. That's important too, because you could get too leaned into just the togetherness of it and go, isn't it great that we're all together? I joke about this, as you know, at MyCORE, I call it kumbaya, MyCORE, kumbaya, right? Like we're not doing that. Right. That's not what that is. That might at times feel like, oh, is this a business? Oh, okay, yeah, this is definitely a business. So be weary of just kumbayaing. There's space for that. There's a book club, a knitting club, fantasy football, whatever. Go who with other who's, but there is a duty to cross, to progress, to grow, to change. Okay. So that said, there's a sequence, just like the dog biting Johnny or Johnny biting the dog. And we call it lead with who, but the short version is that we look at everything first through a who lens, then a why lens, then a what lens. Of course, there's how and there's when and there's where, but ain't nobody got time for that, right? That comes after, that's byproduct. So just assessing these three things, we lead with who. We don't start with it, because starting and leading are very different things. Because if I were to say to you, hey, there's a start, that means there's probably a finish, right? That's a finite game. That's a segment, right? Think back to like middle school math, right? A segment and a line are not the same things. So you want to create a scenario where this who factor is what you're leading with. meaning it's kind of the main event. It's kind of what needs to be punched up above all else. But it's not enough to stay there. You have to bring it into a purpose. You have to bring it into a why, bring it into a mission. You have to let it ripple and cascade and integrate and bleed into one another. And it should be such that you kind of can't tell the difference, that there's some synonyms going on, right? There's some things that are like baked and bonded, and you're kind of like, was that a who or was that a why? Was that a why? Was that a who? Both, right? But it should be a little bit balanced, a little bit unbalanced, I should say, imbalanced to the who. Okay. Then what? Cool. Like, just keep doing your thing, build great tech, build a great company, get your processes right, create an awesome brand. I don't know, get lots of likes and follows and money and all the trappings, but don't do that without having these things right. I'd like to just take a beat, take a pause, and see if everyone's tracking this thinking so far. And then I'm going to pull up this law of diffusion of innovation and we'll talk from there.
Yeah, talk to us. This whole concept of leading with who is, I find, for a lot of people really refreshing, because it can give you permission to essentially be yourself.
Right.
Be yourself as a parent, as a leader of a team, of a business, of a company, of a community. And
yeah, and I love that you say that, because I think there's a little bit of a balance in there, a little bit of a asterisk, which, yes, be yourself, but get really aware of the things about you that are not serving you and others.
Thank you. Yes.
Like we have a lot of love for children, right? I have 5 children, and we should, right? And we say the innocence of a child. If you believe that children are innocent, you do not have any. Children are not innocent. They are the worst. They are not born good. They are born bad. We have to teach them to be good. I know, because my kids, who are better than most when it comes to their behavior, are hellions, biting each other. I make plenty of money now. I feed these kids and they're biting each other. Why are you biting each other? There's a whole pantry. So we have to be careful of the fact that we think people default to good. They don't default. They are good, but they don't default to that. We default to bad, to lazy. We break down. We die. So yes, be who you are, but really more like source from who you are. Right? Like, find energy in some of the nature that is you and assess it. And then innovate it. So watch how this works. If you want to cross the chasm, if you want to break through, if you want the wind at your back, if you want to ride the wave, you are going to have to make a decision that you will innovate, also known as change. This is colossal information I'm sharing with you. I do not mean to be like over dramatic, but this is colossal. So you first make the decision. You and I, us, me, right? Like Taylor Swift says, I'm the problem, it's me, right? Her new song. So first and foremost, Nathan Bourne, me, myself, and I have to be a person that is committed to constant change. There's a good word for this, by the way. It's called dynamic. If you want to be a dynamic speaker, if you want to be a dynamic leader, if you want to be a dynamic company, you need to look up that word, because people misdefine that word with like charisma. They're like, oh, you're a dynamic, you're a charismatic. Those are not the same things. Dynamic literally means changeful. Being charismatic is not the same as being dynamic. You can have a byproduct of charisma by being dynamic. But it is also kind of important to define charisma for a second. Charisma is not what you get other people to feel about you. That's celebrity. That's fame. And it's lowbrow. Charisma is the ability, the effect, the experience of having people think well of themselves. And it doesn't even have to be well, by the way. It's just that they have to feel. So when someone says to me, wow, you're a charismatic blah, I take it as a high compliment. But what I'm really hearing is, wow, Nathan, I spent some time in the environment and it made me really look at me. Thank you. Right. So if you're trying to get people to like you and give you attention, you are so far from being charismatic and dynamic. Sorry. Get your shit together and start working harder on being solid so that you have the bandwidth to serve other people. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting fired up. And I haven't eaten.
Sorry, not sorry. All right.
Sorry, I'm not sorry, guys. I'm sorry that I'm not sorry.
All right. I think we're here for it. That's you don't show up to something wanting to cross something, wanting to have that experience of effort that it takes to cross.
Right. I think I'm in good company from that standpoint. So let's look at this together, because it's not rocket surgery. It's not something that needs like crazy explanation. But can everybody see this? Can I get a thumbs up? Are you guys able to see this? I stole it off the internet. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but maybe we could wait that out. But you can Google this. You can Google the law of diffusion of innovation. You can, map it out yourself. It's a relatively easy visual. Visual. So it's a one pager, but I want to break it down for you, because see that 2.5% right here. This is you, or not, whatever. But like, you're here on this webinar, so it's probably you. And these are the people that are willing to create the change, not just adopt the change. This is a very small group of people, 2.5% of people. Let me be very clear, because I'm not a motivational speaker. If anything, I'm pretty uninspiring in this regard. A lot of motivational speakers make their money trying to tell you that you're this person. And if you buy my book and you listen to our next webinar, you can be this person. Let me be very clear. If there's 100 people in this webinar, 2.5 of you are these people. And I'm one of them. So that means there's only room for 1.5 more people. The worst thing you could do to yourself, to your family, to your bank account, to your peace is be a person that you're not. So don't do this unless you really have sold you on being this person. If not, you're going to need to find where you are in the process. Here's the other thing about this law. It can be applied to different things. It's not universal in the sense that fashion and music and business and philanthropy or disease or anything in between are all the same. So you might be an innovator in one vertical, in one area, and be a laggard, which is the other end, right? These are the people that think the earth is still flat. These are the people that give you their fax number, right? These are the people that are like, can you just like scan it? Isn't it funny how things that were like laggard stuff, like nowadays, if you're using DocuSign, you are a laggard. Like it should be in tech. It should be built into the UX UI. It shouldn't be like a standalone attachment. It should be in the palm of the hand, right? So know that what today people are early adopting will later be a laggard. So this is a who factor. This is an identity, whether you're going to do the work to keep up or don't. I don't know. There's things that I'm not going to keep up with. I will laggard that all the way to my grave. But there's other things that I'm absolutely committed to being an innovator on. So know that. So that's the good news, is you don't have to be an innovator in everything, right? You can pick one thing. I suggest you do. I wouldn't try to be an innovator in a lot of things. I wouldn't try to be it in 2 things. That's crazy. That's chasing 2 rabbits. You might not catch either. You should be focused on one thing. Then you have to set out through this lead with who lens to attract your early adopters. This is very, very important because most people in this moment, if they're speaking to this or conceptualizing this, will use that word attract because it's sensational. And it sounds like a magnet, and people are just coming out of the woodwork and they just love me. And oh my gosh, this mission is so compelling. Let me be clear. You do not attract by attracting. You attract by repelling. Repelling, yes, meaning you have to be repulsive.
Sounds counterintuitive.
Right. Nathan, I can't believe that you cursed. Good. If you don't have the backbone to hear a bad word, please, I've seen, I could go look at your Netflix. You've heard the word. You watch stuff, you see stuff, please. You can handle the S word. Now, I'm not suggesting that I should be like not improving myself in these areas. I'm saying that this is reality, because if you're going to build something in its early stages, it's going to be so intense and so grueling that cursing is the least of your problems. Getting edgy, not sleeping, like that's part of the deal. So do not call yourself an innovator unless you are going to sign up for that. Just like joining the Marine Corps, like you need to know what you're getting yourself into. And when you repel the people that are not your early adopters. So don't focus on the 13.5%. Focus on the 85% that are not innovators and not early adopters. Here's another asterisk within an asterisk. Other innovators might be so innovative that they don't want to come along for something you've built because they're trying to build their own thing. And then you're just two titans locking horns. I've met some sharp people that would have been great assets to my team, but they're too much like me. They want to build a brand. They want to be the founder and CEO. They've got some weird ego like me that tells them that they can do this crazy thing. I'm hyper aware of that. I'm very self-aware. So we haven't even got to the chasm yet. But I just want to know quickly, are you picking up what I'm putting down here? And I know I'm ranting and raving, but I'm just like, I really want to land some punches on this so that you can leave this today a little bit shooken up. And I'm going to do that in the next 5 minutes.
People are saying they're with us so far. They've lived it, Nathan, and you come on strong because there's smaller margins, right? That it's like speaking of it in the way in which you're describing it, right? It's by nature going to be a smaller percentage.
Right. So let's talk about this middle chunk, this early and late majority, what might be known as the masses. And it's 68%, right? So it's 34 and 34, 68%. This is the nugget within the nugget. This is the one thing that you need to get from this if you want to impact and you want to cross the chasm together. You need to know that this is completely counterintuitive, because of course you want mass appeal. Of course you want mass adoption. Of course you want momentum. So you start to build things for the 68%. But the 68% are never going to give you a shot. Try you out, shoulder it with you, solve the problem, give you feedback. They want it perfect or damn near close. And it can't get perfect unless 13.5% of people you've screwed it up on. Another thing that's very, very important, because you might be listening to this thinking macro, like the cell phone or fast food or the internet. No. We all have our market. We all have our community. And take inventory of that. So maybe it's that, hey, I would love to have 100 clients. 100 clients would free me up. I would be doing this full time. I would be crushing it. I would be able to give them, top-notch service. Maybe it's 1,000. Let's just go with 100 for simple math. 68 of those people You cannot build your company and brand and ethos for those people. You have to build it for the few people, because those few people will usher into, carry the flag, wave the banner, cross the chasm with you, because they've got a backbone and a wherewithal for problems. So here's the food for thought. You might need to change everything, including your language, your temperature, your music, and you need to be laser focused on who you're adopting and who is adopting and who you're attracting. So you should be thinking, I'm going to repel these 68 peak clients, these 68 percenters. So what type of language do I have to use? Who do I need to be? Who do I need to punch up to have that person find me and for me to find that person? When you get that right and it's solid, you will cross the chasm together. And 68 people, they'll align with it. They'll connect to it. They'll identify with it, but they won't be your loyalists. They won't be your ride or dies. They won't be your day ones. And do yourself a favor. Don't try to make them that. Every deck of cards, 52 cards, has 4 aces in it. And you could lay them all out face down, 52 cards, and try to guess which one it is. I think it's this one. You will kill yourself. You will run out of cash. You will run out of energy. You will run out of time. You will run out of promises that you've made. You need to take that deck of cards and flip them over until you find the next ace. You love everyone along the way. But the hardest part is that the royal family, Jack, the Queen, the King, they're getting close to being aces. And you'll kill yourself trying to make that Jack an ace. And you'll do things like pull out a Sharpie and try to make the J an A. Don't make that Jack an ace. That Jack is not an ace. That Jack is a jackass ace. Let them be that. Love them anyway, and bolster up who you are as a brand, as a company, as a leader, and people will find you. It will be wild, serendipitous, meant to be. And don't be naive. It's not a coincidence. Be cute and say, what a coincidence if you want, but it's not. You know exactly what you're doing. This very moment, this webinar is innovative. And you are an early adopter. And I'm not talking to the 60, I will be politer in 6 months from now. I won't use the S word as much in 6 months from now. But I'm finding out if you have the backbone to plug into these because you're better because of it, because you're uncomfortable after it. All right, we're out of time.
And hence, people are better than most by way of being here at these webinars, Nathan. Whew. Yeah, it's like a good workout.
Right.
Thank you. And I think it leads to our topic for the next one too, because what are some of the ways to help us stay strong as we're cultivating our who, sourcing from our who, as you talked about today and last webinar.
Yeah, I'm excited for this next episode we're going to do. We're going to do it April 5th. So it'll be 3 weeks from now. It's actually going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So we found that because of our day, we do our executive team meeting and then we do our all hands, and it's a bit of a gauntlet. So I'm going to take a little break, right? It's still around that lunch hour. So maybe you need to extend a lunch if you're in a different time zone. Maybe you need to take an early lunch, but we'd love for you to plug in with us, because both myself and Susan Marie, as you already are getting used to us, but you know, I want to allow a little less of my, you know, I can be a little much. So I've learned I'm better in small doses. So we're going to really together collaborate over the next 3 weeks to unpack this truth that old habits die hard. Okay, so myself and Susan Marie, we're going to discuss the brutal process of breaking bad habits and building new life-giving ones. And there's a little hint there you can see. Willpower won't do it. So we'll see you April 5th. Thank you, Susan Marie. You are amazing. And you're just so great at cultivating the environment, facilitating the moment, and just moderating all of our growth. So thank you.
Thank you, Nathan, for laying this path for all of us to walk together, be better because of it. I look forward to seeing all of you back with us on April 5th. Bring a colleague that you think could benefit from learning about how old habits die hard. And how do we do that without just willpower?
Awesome.
Look forward to seeing you all then.
Bye-bye.